it's not a win. So, different autisms and things. One is each different. Yeah, my cousin's boy, she says since he's been going to this other school, I don't know what it is, but it's in Christchurch, and it's got Mary St. Yes.
Do we have a day in
Yes.
class bit of it?
And they actually base the learning around what the kids are interested in and do the easy QAs around what they like.
Sorry.
So good at that. So I don't think he's doing so well at school.
It's
Yes.
usually after Queen's.
Yeah, those marks are good bullshit. He'd come home,
Given that it's
after one of the parent teacher type evenings, I don't know if it was to do with the Chromebooks, but
I'll go.
I was talking to his teacher, and she didn't give a hint of anything apart from, oh, you was a great student, well. He failed his maths test.
Who's maths teacher?
I think it was science.
Righto, people. Are we somewhere near
Do you not have told me or?
ready to go?
Just give us attention.
We're ready to
Can you
go.
come just sit down
He's got like say 4 or 5.
No,
But then what?
you should be able
What
to.
you give them the
With this one?
Actually, which one do you use to stand there? Sometimes they just make a bit of noise and
Right,
it's
sure,
real
yeah,
loud.
it's the same the other way too.
We actually mute when we're not talking.
Yeah. Treat yourself. Okay, folks. Can everybody hear me? Yep. Okay. That's good. Right, now, all I'm seeking to do tonight is to introduce you to the final assessment. And have you got in front of you by now a thing that's headed up Assessment 3 Final Pre-Circulated Questions? Everybody got that? Right. The final assessment is, we want to do the in-class bit on June the 9th, as you'll see from the top of that, and the pre-circulated questions you obviously can take now and do them between now and June the 9th. Now, we need you to do them this time in your own handwriting, and basically you bring them along on June the 9th and you do the ones in class and we clip them together, and that's your answers for it. So, there's quite a lot in here about the ratios and a bit about budgeting. So, the two handouts that you have, the handout number 10, I think it was, they're two different ways round. I think it was number 10, said analysis of something.
Number 9.
That's number 9, okay, and number 10 is budgeting, is it? Yeah. Right. So you want those, you'll need those two, they're the only two handouts you'll need to refer to, and of course there are also chapters in the box. So first of all, I will go over with you these pre-circulated questions and what you need to know. On the first page, you are given a whole lot of ratios or percentages, that have been already calculated for a sole trader Carl's German sausages. So you don't have to do any calculations there. So they've already been calculated. And when you turn the page, you've got three questions to answer. So question 4, in other words, the other 3 will be hitting you in class. Question 4 is first of all talking about profitability analysis. And it's asking you a number of questions, or getting you to make a call about something. So the first one is state 3 possible reasons for the change in gross profit margin. So what you need to get a hold of when you answer that is, of course, is you want to know, you need to have in your mind what the gross profit margin is and what gross profit is. So you would pick that one up, like most of these ones, on the income statement, that income statement items. Until you get down to number F and you come up with a return on equity measure. Now, I want to draw your attention to the fact that in your handout number 9, about halfway through, there is a heading, Analysis of Financial Statements, Notes as a Basis for Recommendations. Now, can you all locate that? If you can't locate it, in Westport I've got a copy of that, but only, not the whole thing there. Yeah. Okay. You got one? Right. Now, the pages here, starting with the Analysis of Financial Statements, Notes as a Basis for Recommendations, go on, and as you turn over, you'll then come to where it says, what might ratio changes mean? And it gives you 2 or 3 pages referring to different ratios. I think you will find that very helpful in completing the questions on 4A to F. Just to repeat that to make sure you've got it driven home. For question 4A to F, most of them are income statement ratios except for F. And the comments in your handout number 9 talking about things that you could consider or analyse, following on from that page with the heading Analysis of Financial Statements, Notes as a Basis for Recommendations. Now, those are not covered particularly in your textbook, so that will be the best source for getting a bit of guidance on that question. Question number 5 then is asking you about financial stability analysis. Now, to make sure you don't go chasing all around the place too much, most of question 5, in fact, I think virtually all of question 5 is talking about balance sheet ratios. Now, if I quickly touch base with you, question 5A is referring to the current ratio and the liquidity ratio. They are almost the same, but you need to get your head around there is one difference between them, only one difference between them. Then the question B is the one people will tend to find a bit more brain testing, where it's asking you to consider the difference between raising a term loan for 3 years to buy this van, pretty expensive one. One possibility is to raise a term loan for it, or one possibility is to simply increase the bank overdraft. And what it's doing is asking you to work out the effect of each of these two finance methods and against those two ratios. It's not asking you to crunch the numbers, it's just asking you to point out whether there would be an increase, a decrease, or no change. It's not asking you to do a complicated calculation. Question C is asking you to recommend which method Carl should use and give an answer for your answer. Give a reason, sorry, for your answer. Now, question 6 is looking at one or two ratios or measures of what they call asset utilisation, and the common one we have talked about is inventory turnover. You might like to make a little mark that if the inventory turns over faster during the year, then that's good. If it is very slow to turn over, that's not good. It means you're holding stock too long. In real life, in quite a lot of organisations, an inventory turnover of around 3 is considered pretty reasonable. More than 3 is good, and under 3 is starting to get a little bit inefficient. So, you'll be able to look at the inventory turnover and reach some conclusions. Number B for the asset utilisation is the average collection period. If in doubt, head to your textbook, which goes over most of those. And then B, numbered little Roman numerals 2, is asking you to suggest 2 things that Carl might have taken to influence this trend. Number C is asking you to explain why the non-current asset turnover would be of particular interest to him. You'll have to think your way around that. Non-current assets. Now, the reason for giving you the questions pre-circulated is that they take a little while to get your head around, some of them, and you to think what you're going to say, and therefore they're giving you a bit of time to think through them. Now, questions 1, 2 and 3 are a bit easier. But you have to do them in the time scale that we're chasing. The most significant piece is as where you, surprise, surprise, you calculate some ratios. And to do that, you'll have all your formulas on the back, it's the same ones you've been given out, but they'll all be clipped onto the test paper. And just to remind you, these things are a bit of a pain in that if you make a small, hit the calculator wrong or something like that, you're going to lose a mark. So you need to just be fairly, the old story, make sure that your calculator is actually working, and preferably get one with reasonably large things on it.
So do we have to supply our own calculators?
Yeah,
They
probably,
can't be our phones,
yeah.
can they?
Well, because that will probably be done from, I'm not sure where I'll do the test, from either here or Greenmouth, but wherever I'm not, I won't have any spare calculators.
Yeah, so can we use our phone or no?
Prefer you don't, but I'm not going to go hard and fast on it.
Yeah.
Because in terms of supervising tests, of course, I can see the whole three screens. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And the questions 1 to 3, are they on this stuff or?
No, they're absolutely not. The questions 1 to 3 you are given out on the night of the class in-class part. And the in-class part is...
Yeah, but do they cover ratios and that sort of stuff, or is it over everything?
No, it's really just ratios, and there's a question on budgeting. The question on budgeting is very easy. It's just asking you to make some assumptions and turn some existing information to do some calculations to turn it into a new budget. For instance, it'll say something like, for the coming year, the sales are estimated to be an increase of 10% or something like that, and you'll just have to make those alterations. It really is quite easy, but there is, of course, a time limit, an hour and 20 minutes, I think it is, so you have to sort of keep moving at it too.
Is it open book?
There are only
Yes.
the 3 questions that we have to answer in the hour and 20 minutes.
Yes,
Okay.
but it'll take you a minute or two because, it'll take more than a minute or two, it'll take you an hour and 20 minutes, I suppose. There's a reasonable number of ratios to calculate, and there's the budget question, which is another calculation bit, and then of course you need to make a few comments about them too.
As a marks, is it, what you've already given us to do, is it half that and half of that?
Approximately.
Because I'm thinking if you don't think you're going to be very good for those first 3, you better to strive and get more marks for the part you're giving us tonight. You follow what I mean?
Yes, yes I do. I get what you mean, but I don't think there's much point in worrying too much about that, because the second set of questions, the one you're taking away tonight, are a little bit more complicated and require a bit more thinking, but you've got the time to do it. In class, it's more straightforward and a bit calculaty, but you haven't got the time to do it. You have to sort of just keep at it a wee bit. When you're handwriting, most of you are doing this anyway, but when you're handwriting, would you mind putting each question, not the A's, B's and the C's, but each question, start a new page for a new question, even if you've just got part way down a page. It's in your interests. Most of you can probably write pretty well. I guess I've got pretty used to reading, writing. I think that's it. Let me just now quickly go over the sort of traps for young players, where you can lose the marks because in this sort of paper there's quite a lot of right or wrong. You can't get marks for a try. If the jolly calculation is wrong, it's wrong. But the first thing to do is just make sure in your own mind that you have got the use of the ratios correct, the formulas. You'll have the formula attached to the back of the question, back of the paper, and I'll remind you how we do this. If you like to look up the formula page on that handout number 9, or the one I've just given one or two of you, it says the heading is Formula for Ratios for Financial Analysis. So I'll just go down these to make sure we understand the calculation. Working capital, as you see there, is current assets minus current liabilities. So that's pretty straightforward. Not too many problems there. The current ratio is the current assets divided by the current liabilities. Where they have that line between them, the top one is divided by the bottom one. So current assets is divided by current liabilities. The liquidity ratio, now you're going to find out what the difference is the current assets minus inventories and prepayments divided by current liabilities less any overdraft over limit. The next one is debt to total assets, a simple division, total liabilities divided by total assets. Then there's a debt to equity ratio and a times interest earned. So that's the financial stability stuff. Then there's this asset utilisation stuff. Now these ones, the calculations are a bit more tricky and a bit more prone to people making errors with. So the first one is inventory turnover, and that has this notion of average in it. So the cost of goods sold would come off the income statement. You would read that from the income statement, cost of goods sold. And then you've got the question of the average inventory. The average inventory is the opening inventory at the start of the period plus the closing inventory at the end of the period divided by 2. I'll repeat that so that we get it clear. The cost of goods sold comes from the income statement. You just read that figure off for that. The average inventory is the inventory at the start of the period plus the inventory at the end of the period divided by 2. The next one we get is this days sales and inventory. Ending inventory divided by the cost of goods sold divided by 365 days.
Yeah, much they like, if you go through, like, cost of goods sold divided by 365, and then do your ending inventory divided by that figure.
Yes. Yeah. Ending inventory. Now the way you read this one is you get your ending inventory and you do the cost of goods sold divided by 365 and then it becomes ending inventory divided by the calculation of cost of goods sold divided by 365. I think if my math serves me correctly, it'll come out either way, but it's better to do it that way. Now, the accounts receivable turnover is a very straightforward measure. Take the annual sales, divide it by accounts receivable, and the average collection period, which is a very commonly used measure in business. You take the number of days in a year, which is 365. When wouldn't it be 365? Just as a matter of interest.
In a leap year.
In a leap year, that's right. Number of days in a year divided by the accounts receivable turnover. So that's a sort of slightly messy one, isn't it? Non-current asset turnover is in the end quite a simple calculation. Sales divided by property, plant and equipment. Now the net property, plant and equipment is essentially the book value of those at the end of the period. And the total assets turnover is another fairly simple one. Sales divided by total assets. Coming to the profitability ratios. These are a mixture of income statement and the balance sheet. The gross profit margin is the gross profit divided by the sales. Now, you'll see all of those have got a percentage after them. I'll repeat what I said a bit of a while ago. If you want to turn them into percentages, you're fine. If you don't, give me a couple of decimal points as a ratio and I'll be happy with that either way.
When we're doing our percentages, do we round to two decimal places on that as well?
No. Well, you can. I'm not too worried about that. One decimal place will be fine. Some of you that are amateur mathematicians will realise that when you work out the ratio and you end up with 0.06, all you have to do is shift the decimal